Welcome everyone to today's Two Saints podcast show with myself, Mark C, and my co-host Mark H. So, afternoon, Mark, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing all right, mate. Obviously, as we're recording this, I'm going to be honest and say to the viewers, or the listeners, I was at the game, Manchester, yesterday. You'll get the review and obviously the preview of the Wolves home game later in the week.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a bit tired if I'm honest, but I hope everybody out there in the Saints supporting fraternity are, looking after each other, being kind, and more importantly, rejoicing over a point gained at Manchester City yesterday. Because I know I was.
Yeah,
I was in high spirits leaving the stadium yesterday.
Yeah, I'll certainly echo that. I thought at one moment we were going to get robbed. Thankfully, we weren't. I thought it was a really good point. And to be fair, we genuinely didn't think we were going to get 4 points out of the first five. We genuinely didn't think we'd get anything when we both spoke about it off the pod. So, yeah, good to see. Great result. So, just to remind everyone, the ways of accessing the Two Saints podcast show are these. Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints podcast show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints podcast show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show. Right, there you go. So a busy pod again today, and coming up for you in the first half, we've got the Two Saints podcast. We've got the Two Saints roundtable review of Saints 0, West Ham 0, and we've also got Saints news for you. So we've got a few short words coming up, and we'll be right back with the Two Saints roundtable review of Saints 0, West Ham 0.
It's the Two Marks, C&H, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Liam, thanks for joining us and doing this review, first of all, of the West Ham game. So obviously the result was Southampton 0 at West Ham 0. And I think I'll go to Liam first for his thoughts on the game.
Okay, Mark. Yeah, it was a solid performance all round. I think. I think both teams didn't want to lose. I think both teams come out in the game happy with a point each, really. So, but I thought we were very solid. Not that very adventurous in the formation we set up on the 4-1-4-1. A little bit disappointed that we're not playing two up front at home, but obviously Ralph's got his reasons for that, hasn't he? So, I personally don't think that Ralph wants to lose the game, before the start, and that's how it turned out, didn't it?
So you weren't too disappointed at all. I mean, what I would say in relation to my own reflections and sort of trying to get some feedback from yourself would be 4-1-4-1. Yes, okay, if you're away from home maybe and you're looking to get a point. I would say that West Ham are not a regular top six side, and my own feeling about it was that there was probably too much respect given to West Ham, and that was off the back of last season, and I kind of get it. I kind of understand why, but the 4-1-4-1 for me didn't work in the sense that the midfield were way too deep. They were basically sat on top of Oriol Romeu and the back four, so that when the likes of Adam Armstrong was getting ball and later Bojan was getting ball, right, they were literally having to run with the ball because there was nothing in front of them, right? So they didn't have any options. Like normally you would get position and right. So technically for me, Armstrong cut an isolated figure when he did have the ball, because we were looking for Redmond or El Sanusi or James Ward-Prowse, and that's the way I kind of looked at it. He didn't have runners, therefore he didn't have support. We've seen it with Bojan. The first 70 minutes were, I'll use the club's terminology, right? Because we have high match day ticket prices because they have a Premier League club to sell, right? And they would tell you that they're in the business of entertainment, right? Did I feel entertained for 70 minutes on Saturday? No, I didn't. Not at all. I felt entertained for the last 20, 25 minutes. And it wasn't just because Bojan won, because obviously he steals the headlines because he had the opportunities. But we even seen when he came on that he was having to run with the ball the length of the pitch and then, hit a shot and hit post. Diallo was the fact when he came on. But 70 minutes, maybe I'm being disingenuous because maybe, the thing is Ralph can feel vindicated about Saturday because he got what he wanted, which, I think personally was set the stall out for a point, and he got a point, and we were looking to nick the win, if you like, towards the end. But as a spectacle, I was bored. I was genuinely bored. Now I'm a Ralph fan, but I was genuinely bored on Saturday.
I felt sorry for Armstrong up front. You said, I've made some notes here tonight, and just before we come on now, I made some notes. And I put the same word down, isolated.
Yeah.
He was totally isolated. I felt sorry for him, really. He wasn't getting any service. He must have been so frustrated up there that day. And, disappointed when he was taken off, and I felt sorry for him. He never had the service, and he was the lone runner up front, wasn't he? And it must have been so much hard work for that game.
I felt our wide players were key to us scoring goals and giving the front men the service they need. And he got absolutely zero, as you say. So very frustrating for him.
I think just based on previous seasons, we've not really got a very good record against West Ham. That they seem to be a little bit sometimes a bit of a bogey team for us. And maybe I think Ralph maybe it's about getting us supporters on side as well. Do you know what I mean? A point is going to be better than a loss. So maybe it was a little bit about that. But I think also one of the key men that West Ham have got, Antonio, and I think Salisu and Stevens did a really good job on him. Credit should be put there. I think Jack Stevens is one of these players that's had a lot of criticism for me. I think sometimes really unfairly. But actually, I think him and Salisu are looking like they're going to be forming quite a good partnership. And actually, they literally did their job. And at the end of it, Mikel and Antonio was getting more and more frustrated, and then obviously had that sending off. So I think that was part of the plan, he was a key man, let's nullify him, and then go away at the end, bring on Broja, and then you literally nick a winner, which I think the game was a bit lackluster, but it come alive, didn't it, really? I think those last sort of those last 15 minutes.
I'm going to be honest here and say that, I get where people are coming from on the call, but for me, we drew 0-0 with West Ham at home last season, and play more attack and attempt on our part, in that game than what there was on Saturday. I'm just making the point, that it's not like there's been any kind of significant improvement. I think that all I would say is, yes, nullifying threats and all the rest of it, but I come from old school, and my attitude is, when you're at home, you go out and attack games of football. I accept that it's going to be a long slog of the season. I accept that if we finish above, the relegation places, I'll be happy. But I'm sorry, but I will be happy when I look at the summer dealings and everything else, right? Because all we're talking about is potential of players and the slashing of the wage bill and stuff like that there. So I know that the club are going to need my support, the players are going to need my support, the manager are going to need my support. But the only point I'm making is that for me personally, I think when you're at home, if you're not playing the top 4 or 5 sides, top 6 sides, because West Ham isn't a top 6, they're not normally a top 6 side. And I just think, when you're playing them at home, you should be on the front foot, because you've nothing to lose.
Yeah, I agree, Mark. But I just wonder how much did the international break? How much was there also thinking about the international break that we just had? We had other players out that have been part of those international squads. So was Shay Adams just I'm not saying this is it, but was he maybe rested a bit? He played for Scotland. Was he therefore being rested that game, ready for Man City? So he's nice and fresh for Man City.
I think that's true. If you looked at the bench and you looked at what was on the pitch, there was, funnily enough, somebody who had trouble to have a look at this, right? There was just as much money on the bench as what there was on the pitch on Saturday, believe it or not, in terms of spending.
And that's good because that's showing a bit of depth in the squad, which is something I think we've always kind of said we haven't really got. And I think now, this season, I think it does seem that we have got that depth. I mean, look, Kyle Walker-Peters isn't even getting, not even getting a start at the moment, which, last season, that wouldn't have been really unheard of. So, I in some ways, I'm feeling quite optimistic for that, I think. But I do just wonder if those tactics this Saturday were, partly, I think, West Ham nullifying Antonio, but also at the same time resting some of those players.
Ralph does have a plethora now of three very good strikers to choose from up front, but I agree with Leon. He needs to start with two up front. Last season, his best striking partnership was Danny Ings and Shay Adams, and he didn't always play the problem on Saturday in the central midfield area. Because James Ward-Prowse, I'll say this to you all, right? And this is something I've observed over a few seasons with Saints, right? And that is that when Saints are attacking down the wings, okay, and you have either fullbacks or wingers coming forward with the ball, right? None of them can cross a football. It's all across the deck, and it's meat and drink for defenders to defend that. Whereas I sit there and I sort of lament the passing of Matt Targett, because Matt Targett was the only person that could go past the halfway line and then hit a ball into the 18-yard box. He was the only person in modern times that I know that could do it, apart from Dusan Tadic before that. But you look at the next time you're sat and you're watching our team, it's all along the deck. Gineppo, Redmond, it's all along the deck. Ryan Bertram, when he was at the club, he couldn't hit a ball in the air. What has happened to people being able to hit the ball on the run and cross the ball into the box? I know James Ward-Prowse does it at set pieces, but that's at set pieces. That's dead balls, corners and free kick that I lament. But having said that, Saturday...
Hey, Mark, at the end of the day, a point's a point.
Yeah, a point's a point, and it's so much could have been three. And
so, Mark, come on, clean sheet again.
First clean sheet of the season.
Yes, no, I can't get too carried away from that, because I always think of Rickett and the defence is coming sometime soon. I'm a fatalist, what can I tell you? A fatalist.
All I'm going to say
is... it was solid from us defensively, but the concern, it's a strange one, because the concern turned to the centre midfield. So as I say, the central defence issue went away on Saturday. And the good news is that he has three competent strikers now to pick from. So, Ralph, please pick two up.
But also, Mark, just adding to that, what I also think now is he's got confident defenders as well. Because actually, on the back of that Saturday with Salisu and Jack Stevens, you've still got Bedenek to come in. So I think actually, we've had these clean sheets. I think actually it's before Saturday, we've now got quite a confident defence as well. And like you say, we get the up front right as well. Then so actually you've got confidence at either end, which is really what you want, isn't it?
Yes, no, definitely. I mean, I take comfort from the point on Saturday. Really, the reason why whenever I host it is it's just to try and provoke reaction and provoke debate. You know, it's not that I wasn't satisfied with the point. It was more the nature of how we got the point, because I kind of think to myself, he set a stall out for a point, so he achieved his objective. But I just think that the game was slightly been taken, and when you're at home, you're on the front foot.
Thank you, Leon and Tara, for joining us for the Saints Roundtable review of West Ham United.
It's the Two Marks, CNH, on the Two Saints Show, Fiesta 95 FM.
Right, welcome back, everybody. So, Saints news coming up now. So, starting with the first article, which is B team report: Fulham 3, Saints 0. A youthful Saints B team suffered defeat at high-flying Fulham on Friday night as they search for the first Premier League 2 win of the season. As their search for the first win of the season continues. This was Friday, the 10th September, 7 p.m. mark. Premier League 2, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, all I would say, Mark, is that they keep trying to put a slant on things where, you know, it's youthful teams and blah, 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 and they use the same sentiment in the next report. But the fact of the matter is, you know, we've dropped down a division and the B teams still aren't producing results. I mean, that's the long and the short of it. They've had one useful away performance against Nottingham Forest where it finished 0-0, but I mean, I'm not really seeing any marked improvement from last season, given that we've gone down a league as well. So it just does seem to look like it's same old, but you know, all you can hope is that, you know, Dave Horseman gets his ideas across, and, you know, Oliver Lancashire's experience of having played, you know, reserve team football, albeit, you know, B team style. You know, hopefully he'll pass on some nuggets of information to the players, and, you know, they'll turn the results around. I mean, I don't know really what the solution is. I think my most disappointing thing for me was the interview that Dave Horseman gave, I think it was March of this year, where he basically said, you know, at this level it's not about results, it's just about producing players for the first team. And my argument about that whole thing would be, what's the point in producing players for the first team if the B team's consistently losing? Because any confidence that a player has, if you're losing week in, week out, or you're not winning games of football, the confidence of those players, and I don't care how good you are, you know, the confidence of those players is not what it should be going into if you go to play for the first team, you know. But hey ho. Just let's hope that we can get some much needed wins under our belts in the coming weeks, Mark.
So yeah, moving on to the under 18s, Mark, and narrowly beaten by Leyton Orient in the Papa John's Trophy on Tuesday, the 14th September.
Right. So actually, it wasn't the under 18s; it was the B team again.
I'm sorry, it was the B team. My mistake. I read that incorrectly. So I do apologise, everyone.
So effectively, we've had a weekend, a long weekend off, if you like, and then we're back in action. The B team on Tuesday night. I think the thing for me about this is, again, you know, we had, obviously the club have said, you know, they had three academy scholars playing in the B team game, and obviously the loss 1-0. I'm going to be totally honest, Mark. It was the Papa John's, which used to be the JPT, which obviously we won back in the day, and we won it as a League One side. But I question the value of the Premier League sides being in this competition, because obviously they play their B teams, right? The B teams all play away from home, right? So we don't have home fixtures, okay? And a B team, there might be fixtures when a home fixture whenever you get into the knockout rounds, but by and large, in the group stage, you don't play at home, right? The B teams play away. And I question what benefit this competition is. I know it's by invitation, but I question what benefit these competitions are. This competition is now, because basically, if you look at the record, the B teams have been invited since about the last 5 seasons.
Yeah.
4 or 5 seasons, and a B team has never got to the final. I mean, mercifully, I think a B team's never got to a final, and it's always been between either a League One or League Two side, you know.
Yeah.
But I do question what the actual benefits are. I mean, I always thought that if you were in a competition of that size, surely it's about putting out your most competitive side.
Definitely.
Right? But all the Premier League clubs seem to use it as a way of breaking in their under 18s, you know. Yeah. And I just sit there and I think to myself, if you're not going into a competition, at least to try and win it, or put up a good, not even put up a good show and try and win it. No, I'm sorry, try and win it. At the end of the day, it is Wembley. And I would go and watch the B team if they got the Wembley final. I'll go and watch them, no problem.
Yeah.
But I just sit there and I just think to myself, if we're not being competitive in basically what is the biggest, one of the biggest cup competitions, sort of barn. Well, it is in terms of the B teams. It probably is the biggest because you get to go to Wembley, right?
Yeah.
It's the biggest one at their age group, the B team's age group, and yet we are not competitive. And I sit there and I think to myself, if we're not being competitive and not going out there with the mentality, even in the early rounds, let's go out here. These next 3 games is about topping the group and progressing. Yeah. And then we can start dreaming of Wembley. This is the mentality that I have, but I question what the idea is about us as a club being in this competition if we're not in it to win it. Otherwise, so as the club saying this, we're just in it to make up the numbers in this competition.
See, for me, you want to be looking at it going, right, we've got our B team. Our B team going to go out and play in this competition and we're going to win it because we want our B team to be good enough that those players can step into the first team when the slot becomes available. And at the moment, you haven't got that. So for me, I question it as well. I just think it's a pointless exercise. If you're not going in there to win it, as you say, what is the point?
Because there is a significant. I mean, for the age group or for the B teams, right? There is a significant prize at the end of it.
100%,
You get to go to Wembley.
Yeah.
And if you're lucky enough to win the trophy, even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
But this to me is the biggest competition, to my mind, that the B team play in. It's a bit like the under-18s, their biggest competition is the FA Youth Cup. Soon as they go out of the FA Youth Cup, for me, the season's over. Unless they're challenging for their league. Unless they're challenging for the league, right? The B team isn't even challenging for what I call the second division of where they're at. We won't be challenging for that because we've already seen what, because the results take a pattern. But, I just sort of sit there and I think to myself, there's no point being in the competition if we're not going to be competitive. And we're going to use it. We're going to use it to ground our 18-year-olds.
No, absolutely right. So moving on, talking of 18-year-olds, moving on to the under-18s. Saints 3, Arsenal 3. A dramatic second-half comeback from Southampton under-18s saw them retain their unbeaten record in 2021-22 with a 3-3 draw against Arsenal. And Saints goal scorers, just going to have a quick look. The Saints goal scorers for you, Mark, were Luke Pearce, Jimmy J. Morgan and Fedel Ross Lang. Those were the Saints goal scorers, and 3 yellow cards for Saints.
Yeah,
quite a feisty game by the sounds of it.
As I say, it was excellent that they snatched a draw from the jaws of defeat, because obviously, it looked like, Saints were basically going to fall to a 3-2 defeat, but they managed to get the draw. And this is something to crow about, Mark, because the under-18 sort of mirrored the B team last season in terms of results, and yet they've started this season unbeaten. I think it's 3 wins and 2 draws, something like that. So, even though I might have a downer about the B team, there are reasons to be really positive about how our under-18s have started, and it's been an impressive start for them, and that potentially something that we can get excited about. And I know, the next article certainly is something that you and I have been utilising about over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and that is Southampton women, everybody. And Saints have cleared the Cheltenham hurdle in the Cup. It was Cheltenham 2, Southampton 3. This was in the FA National League Cup. Southampton women marched past Cheltenham 3-2 away from home as Marianne Spacey-Cow's side deservedly progressed. It was the host who took the lead early, a dipping long shot from Abby Bevan in the 18th minute, giving Southampton something to think about. But Saints come back very well, nicely, and we'll go back down to the lineups and see, obviously, who scored for Saints. So Georgie Freeland scored for Saints, and obviously Lucia Kendall got 2. So a brace for Lucia Kendall and Georgie Freeland. So well done to them. And obviously they got past Cheltenham in the Cup, Mark. It's a good progression again. They just can't stop winning, can they?
As I keep saying, the bandwagon, as I've now started to call it, the bandwagon rolls on to the next one, my friend. And, the thing is Saints actually already have a fairly decent history, even since they restarted again, because I think it was 2 seasons ago in the League Cup they actually got to the semi-finals, I think it was, because they beat Portsmouth women in the quarter-final and they got through to the semi-finals. So it's a competition that they've already got a little bit of history in, and as we keep saying, Mark, winning breeds confidence, and if you need a really good example of that, the under-18 showing their determination, not to lose games, and, the women, week in, week out, win, and you're sitting there thinking, hopefully it's not going to end anytime soon. So, yeah, no, it's just fantastic. And obviously, as well as being a good league, an excellent league side, we're an excellent cup side as well. Last season following on, we got to the last 16, got knocked out by the Women's Super League team in Birmingham City, or Birmingham Women. So, as I say, all this winning every week, it does breed the confidence, and it does raise the level as well.
But the thing is as well, I think winning becomes a habit as well. I think about when Saints were doing so well under Koeman and Nigel Atkins and others, when we've been on these really good runs where we've been winning and we've been winning consistently, it breeds a habit, doesn't it? You start winning by habit. And I think with women, they've got to the point they're almost winning by habit now. And when Saints have been successful with the first team, under Nigel Atkins, those back-to-back promotions, that was about that winning mentality. We got so used to winning, it became a habit for 2 seasons, didn't it? And it got us promoted twice, And with women, I think it's the same.
Very much so, very much so.
And that's the thing, and Ralph talks about breeding a mentality, and at the moment he's breeding a mentality with the players where they're not losing, and they've gone 4 games unbeaten now, so yeah, I think winning and having positive results definitely has an impact, 100%. And it's good to see, the women have been absolutely superb, and I can't wait to actually see them in the flesh, to be fair. Although it seems we missed the trick, Mark, not being at the Lionesses match the other night when they won 8-0. Anyway, moving on from there.
I couldn't have done that in City as well, mate.
No, I understand
I'm absolutely shattered today.
Yeah, I think I might have been attending a certain ceremony if you'd done both of them. So thank God you didn't. All right, anyway, moving on. Southampton FC women duo, Laura Rafferty and Kiera Watling, have both been called up to the Northern Ireland senior squad ahead of their upcoming World Cup qualifiers. And I know Mark, as a Northern Irishman, must be absolutely ecstatic.
Yeah, well, it's nice for me to be able to crow about it, Mark. Gotta be honest with the listeners and say that there isn't a bias going on here. Basically, if one of the girls got called up from the Saints team to Wales or Scotland or England, we would be talking about it in the pod. Obviously, both Caitlin and Laura have been called up to represent Northern Ireland at the upcoming fixtures, and I can't say that they won their opening fixture, the World Cup qualifiers against Luxembourg, quite convincingly. I'm not sure. I don't think either of the girls got on, unfortunately. Okay. So I'd expect to see them in their next international on Wednesday night.
Obviously, to the regular listeners of the pod will know that obviously we included the fact that Lucia Kendall and Millie Mott were both called up for England. So there's definitely no bias going on there. Everybody who listens in will know that anyway, Mark. But it's important to remind everyone of that fact. Obviously, Lucia Kendall and Millie Mott from the same team. We obviously mentioned them when they got their call-ups as well.
Yeah, I mean, we only just focus on everything Saints. So whatever comes up and it gets reported.
Absolutely right. That's right. So the next story we've got for you is another Saint who's been given the Forever Saint Award, and this was awarded to Glenn Cockrell. And yet again, Mark missed the award ceremony because it's at the completely wrong end of the pitch. So unless you've got a set of binoculars and exceptionally good eyesight, you've got no hope. But thoroughly deserved, Mark. He continues to do an awful lot of work for the ex-Saints and everything else, so well deserved, Glenn.
It wasn't until you told me that it was the presentation actually took place at the northern end. And I'm sat there going, well, I'm at totally the wrong end of the stadium to see anything. Yeah. But, look, at the end of the day, I think this award, Forever Saint, it's a great award because obviously I'm hoping that it's going to be handed out to those that are richly deserving of it. And Glenn is, given that Glenn was, a stalwart, well over 300 appearances for Saints, comfortably over 300 appearances for Saints. And not only that, obviously, it gives a lot of time to the charity work that's done through the ex-Saints, because I know that Glenn organises, the teams that are going, certainly the teams that are going to play in all these sort of charity matches.
I'll be honest with you, Mark. I think there might be a couple more of these later on in the season, and I'm thoroughly hoping this is going to happen, actually, because I can think of a couple of Saints who probably deserve this Forever Saint Award. Although part of me's been thinking it'd be quite interesting to see how Kenzie Bernardi's going to get on presenting it, because I think one of them's up in Sheffield and the other one's out in Florida or somewhere. So it'd be quite interesting to see how she manages to hand them over. And obviously I'm talking about James Beattie and Nick Holmes. You probably both deserve one, to be fair.
Yeah, no. But as I say, it's something that, is richly deserved to Glenn. And,
absolutely.
We're really, I know that we're really happy, on the Two Saints show that,
absolutely,
the recognition's there at least. So I'm expecting to see one handed out every home game. So
yeah, I think that's what's going to happen.
I'll be watching with interest to see who the next recipient is.
Me too, absolutely. So, moving on to the next story. I don't know how many official betting partners the club need or how many betting companies the club need to involve with, Mark, but Saints announced Paramatch as official betting partner for Southampton FC, and you're going to see them around the LED boards around St Mary's. We've got a betting partner or a betting sponsor on the shirts, and we've now got an official betting partner. I thought Sportsbet were the official betting partner. I'm definitely confused.com.
After a minute, so am I, and it kind of, I don't like being critical of my club, Mark, but it kind of goes against the grain when we portray ourselves in a certain way, and yet, and I accept the shirt thing, I accepted the shirt thing that for a season, we were going to be going with Spezia or and all the rest of it because it was difficult to get a sponsor in at such short notice. But it's obvious to me that behind the scenes, right, they didn't do. I don't suspect they did due diligence looking for other companies. I actually think the partnership probably worked really well for the football club, worked really well for Sportsbet.io, right? And they decided to continue the partnership. Not necessarily a problem with that, but then I kind of think to myself, if they're on the shirt, surely then they should be the official partner bet-wise as well. Why do we need a second sort of, because it is a sponsorship deal, you know, we've got a sponsor on the shirt. Why are they not your betting partner? Why does the deal not extend to them being your betting partner? Why do we need to bring in another betting company? I mean, at the end of the day, yes, it's probably generating much more money and stuff like that there for the football club. But I don't know. You know that these sort of things don't sit well with me anyway. But and you know, and I'm having to walk around with a betting company on my shirt, but it is what it is, and I suppose at the end of the day we're going to see loads of these adverts on the boards, the flashing boards. You know, absolutely right. As I say, strange decision, but I mean, look, everything's motivated around money, and I suppose it's a way to bring money into the football club. Look, I'm not. Let me just say this: I'm not against people betting, but you know, I see the other side of it as well. You know, or I've seen the other side of it, and it's not great. But yeah. As I say, it's probably just another way for the club to gain extra revenue streams and stuff like that.
Absolutely. So moving on to the final story, and this is that Saints B team are due to play at St Mary's today at 2 p.m. versus Burnley. All tickets have now been claimed, so there won't actually be any tickets available at the ground. Obviously, those of you that are going will be doing, or those of you that are listening, we will be actually reviewing the game in the later podcast later this week, obviously, because the game's actually today, and obviously the pod will be going out just after that, I would think. So obviously we'll get to review the game once we get a chance later in the week.
All I would say is this: I mean, obviously people are already at the stadium getting ready for the game itself, but the thing is this isn't sort of a pointless exercise. And my hope would be that if there's a good bumper crowd there, you know, at St Mary's today, you know, the people that are there will roar them on to a win. And it would be a much needed win, given that I can't remember the last time they won a game of football. Yeah. So you know, let's hope that it has a positive effect. I mean, actually, you know, Dave Horseman, to be fair to him, you know, he's been champion people getting to the stadium for this game, obviously to try and roar on get the supporters to roar on their encouragement for the B team.
As we've discussed with the women's team, you know, football stadiums are made for playing football in. Let's play football in them. You know, if the first team aren't playing, put the B team or the women in there. You know, that your stadium's there, make use of it. I don't see any reason they shouldn't be playing there, to be fair.
100%. I mean, I'm a great believer that, you know, when the women get to the championship or even get to the women's version of the Premier League, you know, I would have the games as double headers. Absolutely. You know, if they're both playing at home one week, why not have the games as double headers?
Well, the ironic thing is as well, Mark, the B team, when they have actually played at St Mary's or they've played at the Dow years ago as a reserve team, they used to win more games than they lost.
Yeah.
So, you know, it does have an effect.
That's true, mate. I mean, so the old reserve league used to be on the Monday nights, and there was an equal split back in the day of games at Staplewood and then games at the stadium. Yeah. And I used to go to both. I had a friend that used to drive me down to Staplewood. Yeah. And, you know, when the B team was playing at home, I was living in Woolston in Southampton at the time. Yeah. And I just used to get the bus over the bridge with a couple of friends and go and watch them, you know. And you're right. When they were actually playing in the stadium, the results were a lot more positive, you know. So there is that to it. But, let's hope with them playing in the stadium today that they can get a positive result and lift themselves, because it'll give the players a lift. And I'm hoping that the crowd will give the players the necessary lift to go and win a game of football.
Yeah, so come on, you Reds, and get behind them, people.
Yeah.
So anyway, that brings us to the end of that section of the pod. So we're going to take a very short break shortly. But coming up in the second half today, we've got other football news, Saints in the press and Saints transfer news, two Saints corner chat and two Saints roundtable preview, or review, I should say, of Man City versus Southampton. Tune in to the Two Saints show every Thursday 1 to 3 p.m. on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com with Mark Carter and Mark H. With regular features such as Saints match previews, Saints match reviews, Saints in the press, Saints transfer gossip, goings on in and around the club, corner chat and the week's other football news. Right, welcome back, everyone. Other football news. The Prime Minister won't rule out sport COVID passports. Boris Johnson says he will not rule out introducing mandatory COVID passports for people attending sports events or for large crowds. So he said he would not rule out introducing mandatory COVID passports for people attending sporting events in England this winter. And a news conference outlining what will be done if COVID cases continue to rise, he said COVID passports were only part of a plan B. He said they might be appropriate for venues with closely packed crowds. We'll keep further measures in reserve, he said. COVID passports would mean people would be required to show proof whether of double vaccination, a negative COVID test or finishing self-isolating after a positive PCR test in order to gain entry to crowded events. If introduced, COVID passports would be required for outdoor sports stadiums with an attendance of 10,000 people or more. He added, some events have been using mandatory checks over summer very effectively to get going. I think it'd be sensible for a government not to rule that out.
Right, I want to say this, Mark. Obviously, we're a Saints football podcast. That's basically what we are. Don't really want to cover this too much because it's not really our forte as such. The only thing I would say, and I know you'd like to update the listeners on that, because just before we started recording, you told me obviously that they are introducing passports for.
Yeah, it looks as though it's coming in.
So. All I would say is I respect the fact that obviously these are unprecedented times, and there probably is a need for some sort of passport control, but it's the inconsistencies in the sense that you were able to go to a nightclub, and it's in close. When you're in a nightclub, you're in close proximity. Everything else. And then you can carry COVID back to your family, but you don't need a passport for that. And yet that would be indoors as well. Whereas for a football, for a sporting event, mainly that's outdoors, you're going to have a COVID passport. It's just the inconsistencies of that. But that's where I'm going to leave it. That's where I'm parking it. And I'm not going to say anything else.
I mean, there are conflicting reports because obviously Sajid Javid came out and said they're not using COVID passports. There are other reports now saying they will be using passports. So it's really difficult to know sort of what they're actually going with, to be fair. So it's a difficult one. I mean, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, we'll move on from there because, like Mark said, it's not really our forte. So we'll keep an eye on that. And obviously, if there are any updates due from that, we'll obviously let you know, everybody. So moving on to Women's Super League. And Steph Houghton has said that she wants better WSL refereeing. And I agree with her, Mark, actually. I think they should be on a par with the Premier League. Why shouldn't they? They should have exactly the same level of officials, VAR and all the other stuff that goes with it. Right. Although you probably don't want VAR, Steph, trust me.
No, that's probably true. All I would say is I was listening to the game on the radio when this happened. So this has come about because Manchester City were playing Tottenham last Sunday, and basically Tottenham scored a winner. Be about 10 minutes to go. Obviously, it was unexpected. Manchester City were expected to win the game. They took the lead, Spurs equalised. But the reason why Steph Houghton is calling for basically, refereeing standards to be improved, or even referees to be appointed from, the men's Premier League, is because basically the winner that was scored by Spurs, the girl basically two-handed put the ball into the back of the net. And I have seen the footage, and trust me, it is two-handed. And the only thing I can reference to that from the Saints' perspective is, and this was one of the reasons actually why VAR ended up being brought into the Premier League. This was one of the reasons for it, and that was the Doucouré handball, against Saints at Watford, and I think it made the game 2-2. It was 2-1.
Yeah, that wasn't football. That was basketball.
Yeah, and you would honestly, if you've seen the clip of the Spurs girl putting it in the back of the net, you would have thought the same thing, because I, having watched it, and obviously I've seen the Doucouré incident loads of times. I was actually at the game, and you sort of sit there and you go, that isn't done, And maybe even when deliberate things like that happen, because they were both deliberate, I'm sorry, players know what they're doing when they're doing that. If you go two-handed to a ball,
Thierry Henry against Northern Ireland, Mark.
What was that?
Thierry Henry against Northern Ireland.
No, that was against the Republic.
Oh, well, I thought it was against Northern Ireland. There you go, I stand corrected.
It's the same thing. He denied Ireland the chance of getting the World Cup.
Yeah.
But having said that, Mark, I do think that in response to things like that, when it's that deliberate, should there be some sort of committee that look at these sort of things and actually go, hang on, it's not a 2-1 result, it's a 1-1 result, because it's such a deliberate action, mate.
Well, the thing is,
talk about Thierry Henry, Doucouré, they're deliberate action.
They've got a dubious goals panel that quite kindly took a goal off of Shea Adams recently and gave it as an own goal. So, surely they've got a dubious handballs panel, haven't they?
Do you know what I mean? But as I say, look, all I would do is I'm backing Steph Houghton in the call, because when it's that blatant and the officials aren't picking up on it, it just shows that the officials aren't of a significant standard.
Absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. So we move on to US soccer, and off the back of obviously what happened with Ireland recently, Equal Pay in Sport, US soccer offers identical contracts to men's and women's teams. The US Soccer Federation's offered identical contracts to its men's and women's national teams in an attempt to resolve its gender pay dispute. However, the women's side of it saying basically it's just a PR stunt.
I mean, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. You can't sort of appease everybody. I suppose I would imagine that where the women's officials are sort of coming from is, all right, that's on an international stage, but would like to see much more equality, at the different club levels, and the pay gap, the pay gap be reduced significantly. And I get all of that, but surely if it's equality pay in international football, as a start base, that has to be a good thing. I mean, obviously I don't know how the American system works that well, but having said that, I sort of sit there and I kind of think to myself, well, surely anything that sort of makes sure that there's equality in pay has got to be a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we'll move on to Celtic. This is a really interesting article, Mark. So we'll read through that, and then obviously we'll come back and pick the meat out of the bones, as I say. So Dominic McKay's arrival as Celtic chief executive saw him facing the full gamut of modern-day media: television journalists, radio reporters, newspaper writers, bloggers, vloggers and podcasters. McKay talked for Scotland that day, a non-stop mantra about how, in the coming months and years, he was going to modernise, evolve and develop the club for the fans of the present and the future. His departure just over 2 months later was somewhat more subdued. A statement on Friday caught everybody on the hop. 23 words from the chairman, 23 words from the now former chief executive, 46 words in total. and what was the blink and you'll miss it rain, the abrupt goodbye was fitting in a sense. Already, it almost feels like McKay was never really there. The valedictory statement mentioned that McKay was leaving for personal reasons. It went on to express good wishes to him and his family. The way it was worded was unfortunate, for it allowed the opinion to be formed that something upsetting had befallen him in his life. Certainly in the offices of his former employer, Scottish Rugby, there was concern. He's well thought of at Murrayfield, and in the information vacuum there was chat about what was going on in his world. Nobody knew. Inevitably, the personal reasons explanation and the mention of his family sparked speculation in Cyberland. Nobody had a clue what was going on, so the theories emerged. The following day brought stories in a few newspapers. The message relayed was that McKay wasn't working out. He was a bit out of his depth and he jumped from his position before he was pushed. The jump before he was pushed expression appeared in several places. It wasn't a figment of a journalist's imagination, and it didn't drop out of the sky. Many calls were placed to him in order to find out his side of the story, but he's not been minded to give it. One of the many curious things about all this is that Celtic had known all about McKay for many years. Himself and Peter Law got to know each other well. They worked on a few things together. McKay has regularly spoken about his love for the club. As an executive team at Celtic Park, they had ample opportunity to size him up and assess him as a potential successor to Law. If you buy the view that the job was too big for him, then surely you have to ask about the judgment of those who put him there. That's if you buy that version of events. Until McKay speaks up and the story is incomplete, there are two sides to every tale.
I have to say that's basically an article that was done by Tom English, and it's available on the BBC website. For me, this really baffles me, Mark. So that this guy was like the chief executive of Scottish Rugby, right? And he's moved across because Peter Lawwell has stood down basically as the chief executive at Celtic, right? So obviously this Dominic McKay's come in, and I would have thought that his credentials, given that he was working at Scottish Rugby, would have been half decent, and now the suggestion is that he was out of its depth at Celtic. I find that hard to believe. I mean, I've got to say that obviously people had been watching him. I would have thought people had been watching him at Scottish Rugby, and for whatever reason he hasn't made the transition. I've got to say I'm disappointed for Celtic on the whole, because obviously they're in the middle. They're in a position where Peter Lawwell stood down. And I think Peter Lawwell was more or less endorsing the fact that Dominic McKay had come on board. You have the appointment, obviously, of Costa Conglu, and it looked like he'd managed to start sorting out their transfer policy. Because the thing is there didn't seem to be one when he first arrived there. So he was taking the manager was taking a much more hands-on approach in terms of the players that they were recruiting and stuff like that. And I just think it's sad that 9 weeks into the job, he's had to step down as Celtic are putting it, because he's out of his depth. I just find it very strange. And surely you would have been watching a candidate for that kind of job from a long way out. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have thought it would have been a decision that you would have taken and then sort of thought, actually, we've got this wrong, because surely you would have been keeping your eye on the person for a while. But, as I say, I just think it's disappointing for the club. It's disappointing for the fans, because like Tom English, alludes to, that this was going to be part of the brave new world of Celtic, and now they're going to have to probably go back the process of recruiting they'll have to recruit a new chief executive again, and what happens while that vacuum isn't filled, But disappointing, and it's such a short reign. 8 weeks?
Yeah. So moving on, and this is a story that's quite alarming in itself, actually. So Airdrie's Rico Quitongo says he was racially abused by one of his team's own fans during Saturday's Scottish League game.
The thing is, Mark, and I didn't really, I don't enjoy having to highlight stuff like this, but obviously I've highlighted it. All right, so it's Airdrie, and it's in Scotland, and all, but the fact that obviously takes your breath away is the fact that the lad's getting abused by one of his own supporters, you know, and you kind of sit there and you think, what sort of, I mean, this is why I always call out the racial thing, because I kind of think to myself, you know, do you have a brain? You know, are you fully functioning? You know, it just baffled me when I read the story. Just absolutely baffled me. I thought to myself, you're there for first and foremost, especially if it's your club, you know, you're there to encourage the team. Yeah. Right? I might have questions about our B team, but I would turn up at a game and I'd be sat there and I'd be going, today's the day you're going to get the win, right? And this lad's turned out for Airdrie, right? And obviously he's on his mettle, he's playing for the club, he's doing his job, you know, and then the next thing is he touches the ball or whatever it would be, he sees and hears that he's being racially abused by one of his own supposed supporters. You know, yeah. I mean, I don't get where the mentality is there. I honestly, man, I'm beginning to give up with people who have these problems with, you know, people of a different skin colour and stuff like that there. Because, I mean, you know, we all bleed the same, you know, and I don't understand it, but this is ridiculous. You know, so this guy's gone along with his Airdrie scarf and all the rest of it. He's supporting Airdrie for the day, and then he just decides to racially abuse one of his own players.
Yeah, no, I just don't think that's right. So, moving on to the next story, and this relates to Pele and the fact that he's ready for extra time as he leaves intensive care following surgery to remove a tumour from his colon. Yeah, good news.
Well, I like this description of he was getting ready for extra time. So obviously he is intending to live past 100 by the sounds of that. You know, if he's getting ready for extra time, you know. But look, you know, we were going to cover this last week. I'm glad we left it to this week because obviously the prognosis sounds a lot better than it was the last couple of weeks. And, you know, I know that the both of us wish him a speedy recovery.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I know there's a certain player that you and I, certain ex-Saints player that you and I both know very well, Mark, in Bill Beanie. You'd be very pleased to hear that Pele's on the mend because he was lucky enough to play against him when he played out in the States. So your old friend and combatant Bill is making a good recovery by the sounds of it.
Yes, obviously that was in the days when Pele was playing for New York Cosmos.
Correct.
And Bill was playing for the Washington Diplomats.
Absolutely. No, and that brings us to the end of that section today. So we're going to take a very short break and we'll be back straight after that.
Like your football? Then why not tune in to Mark C and Mark H, two passionate Saints fans talking about all things Saints and football every Thursday 1 to 3 p.m. on Fiesta 95 FM and via onlineradiobox.com. Missed anything in the show? Don't worry, you can follow our podcast via Acast, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Deezer, iHeartRadio, TuneIn Radio, YouTube and Facebook. You can also access it using Alexa.
Right, we've had our oranges and Mars bars, so we're back in the game now. So, Saints in the press and transfer gossip, everybody. So, starting with Oriol Romeu is helping Lianko Vogovic settle in at Saints. the Brazilian's obviously there, and Romeo's acting temporarily as a translator, Mark.
Yeah, so, I mean, this one doesn't really surprise me. No. So, Lanco, obviously being Brazilian, speaks Portuguese, right? And obviously, I know Romeo's Spanish, so you'd expect maybe that he would have a greater understanding of Portuguese than anybody else at the football club.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously, in the interview, you know, Ralph's very honest and says that his Portuguese is limited. So it's not that surprising that obviously Romeo's been, you know, front and centre in helping, you know, Lanco adapt the life at Southampton. And
although I have to say, Mark, what will annoy me is if Lanco leaves Saints and the next club he joins, he starts speaking English straight away.
That sounded like a bit of a Pochettino quote there, because
that's Pochettino syndrome, it's become known as.
Yeah, I know that people got annoyed, obviously, whenever Pochettino, you know, after he left Saints, he didn't have a translator, and all of a sudden he was speaking English. But I just think that was more to do with the football club not wanting him to sort of slip up with English journalists at the time. Absolutely. But we all knew at the time that he could speak English, you know, to a fairly decent degree. I mean, he was much better. Pochettino was much better at speaking English, I think, than probably Puel or the lad from Argentina that came after him. I'm struggling to remember his name. Pellegrino, yeah. So, you know, but look, I mean, as long as he's able to settle in, and more importantly, show us what he can do on the pitch, you know. As I say, you need somebody to help you adjust and settle into life in a strange land, strange country. Although the language of football is universal, mate. So, you know, in terms of getting the message across, I still don't think it should make any difference, no matter what language he speaks.
Yeah, absolutely right there. Absolutely right. I totally agree with that. So, moving on to top draw Brozier has impressed McCarthy since his arrival at Saints. Armando Brozier has impressed Alex McCarthy, who described him as top draw after his impact off the bench for Saints against West Ham. I would have said scintillating rather than top draw when he came off the bench against West Ham.
So, hang on. So why is it that he's only impressed him since the West Ham game? He played against Newport. Where was he? I mean, I know Alex McCarthy didn't play, but I think he was on the bench. Was he not paying attention?
Well, I was going to say, it shows how much attention he pays when he's not playing, doesn't it? Really, mind you, it's about the same level as when he's playing. To be fair.
Well, I just want to speak about Brozier. I mean, look, the thing is who, you know, haven't noticed him when he was playing international football for Albania, and this was before he sort of came to our attention and we took him on loan. And, you know, he hasn't kicked the ball in anger for Chelsea's first team, right? And yet, before he came to us, you know, Chelsea did the classic Saints thing, didn't they? Where they go, right, here's a 5-year contract, sign it, you know, and then he signs it and he gets sent out on loan to Chelsea. But I suppose the thing I'm trying to say, Mark, is, right, you know that a player has a certain pedigree, right, if he's already playing for his international side. Now, some people may scoff at Albania, but when I went to the Euros in 2026, it was Albania's first major tournament, right? And I watched them play Romania, and they actually beat them 1-0. And, you know, I do think that you still have to be of a certain standard, especially if you're playing for a European country, right, to play international football at such a tender age. And for him to be able to do so, you know, it just shows what a good young player he actually is. You know, so the pedigree was kind of there even before we signed him on loan. And obviously then it was confirmed to me, you know, during the Newcastle game, because he was alive to certain situations or the ball dropping to him, and being in the right place at the right time is key for a striker as well. And he shows that in abundance. And I think, the cherry on top for me was, even though I sat there and I thought, good in the air, good on the deck, I hadn't actually seen his running prowess until the West Ham game. And certainly, he's got a turn of speed on him. And like I've said previous podcasts, Ralph need worry no more, because he has 3 strikers now. So that, 3 really good strikers. So there's no reason why he can't play 2 up top every game.
No, absolutely right, Mark. So I've got a bit of breaking news for you, everybody. This is just flashed up on the Twitter feed at the moment. Saints B team, it's not going well, unfortunately, against Burnley. It's been a red card for the Saints B keeper, Harry Lewis. He's actually miskicked it straight to a Burnley forward, and the referees adjudged him to foul him, trying to make up for it. He's the last man, and he's gone. Harry Lewis has been sent off the Saints B team. So not great against Burnley. That's the 30th minute mark. Currently 0-0. But Saints down to 10 men. Harry Lewis, the goalkeeper, sent off.
Unbelievable. But I'm not
Mark, could you?
Let's move on to the next article.
There you go. You couldn't write it. So anything else comes in, people will keep you updated. But you couldn't write that, could you? Unbelievable. He's not had the best Saints career either so far, to be fair. Anyway, moving on. Salisu is nasty in physical duels, but Saints want to improve his ball playing. I don't think he's done an awful lot wrong, Mark, in all fairness. But, any improvements are welcome, aren't they?
Is this an article? Because I've got to tell you, Mark, yesterday, get to the stadium, hear the team news, and I am, you know me, right? I'm livid because I'm sat there going, Salisu, our quickest centre half over the ground, right? And certainly, for me, he's looked our most composed.
Bearing in mind that we're playing. Bearing in mind that we're facing a Man City team.
I'm not saying that Jack Stevens isn't playing well alongside him, because he is. Right?
But the thing is, I looked at it and thought, we're playing Grealish and Raheem Sterling, and he's dropped Salisu, our quickest centre half. We're in big trouble. It turned out he hadn't actually dropped him, to be fair. That was a bit harsh to say he'd been dropped, but. Yeah. But the thing is like that's the way I kind of looked at it when I got to the stadium. So, I don't know. But having the thing is as well, Mark, when he came on,
the point that I'm trying to make is this actually an article?
No, not at all.
Because the thing was he comes on midway through the first half, right, and he was composed. The ball distribution, his ball distribution was really good yesterday.
Yeah.
In fact, both the centre halves ball distribution. Also,
in fairness, he's part of the reason that Saints got that result yesterday. It was a fantastic save at the end of the game from Alex McCarthy. But that, combined with the 3 superb blocks that Salisu puts in the second half, that is what got Saints the point yesterday. Because 3 of those blocks from Salisu yesterday was superb.
Yeah, so I don't really, I'm not really grasping where the article's coming from, but I just want to quickly say it was nice seeing Bednarek back, because he had a really good game, especially first half.
He did.
There's a couple of a block and an interception that he made, which was key, because I think if it had fallen to a City player, we might have been in trouble. But But no, going back to Mohamed Salisu, I don't really get the article. I just kind of sit there and I think to myself, he is the one player since the start of the season, really, that has impressed me. Okay, people say he was at fault for the first goal at Everton. I would say that was Alex McCarthy's fault, because he doesn't communicate with his defenders. Exactly. And there was an example of that yesterday, but I'm not going to go there.
Do you know what, Mark? It's ironic you say that, because I watched a little bit of footage yesterday, and for anybody who's forgotten, it was Peter Shilton's birthday yesterday. The great Peter Shilton, who obviously I loved as in the Saints shirt. I thought he was a fantastic goalkeeper. I was lucky enough to see him in his prime. And there was a highlight from a game against Liverpool yesterday where he saves one low down to his left, and they said, "Oh, Shilton saved it again. What a game he's having." And the one thing I noticed is, the second he makes that save, he's up on his feet and he's telling his defenders where he wants them. And I thought, you know what? There's a big difference between that and Alex McCarthy. Alex McCarthy never tells his defenders where he wants them and doesn't organise them. Shilton was constantly doing it. And there's a sign of a good goalkeeper, can organise his defence. And that, for me, that's the reason we conceded at Everton. Alex McCarthy's lack of organisation.
It's communication, Mark.
Yep.
He doesn't communicate or talk enough to the defenders. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Absolutely.
The next story.
So yeah, new Lionesses head coach Wiegman very excited to kick the new era off at St Mary's. She certainly was, and it must have reflected on the team because they went out and thumped Macedonia 8-0.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
The only reason why I included this story was I felt it was important, given A, that it was at St Mary's, and B, that we don't see a lot of national women's and men's football played at St Mary's. So it was a great start for the England women, and obviously a great start for the new manager. I've got high hopes for her, I've got to admit. I've got
and as I said to you on the radio show, Mark, as well, I learned that Nikki Shakespeare and her mum, who you and I both know, was lucky enough to get tickets for the game. They were handed the tickets by one of the England players. They actually got to go and see the game, and it was an 8-0 win. So I'm sure they had an absolute great time. So I'm so happy for Nikki and her mum. Nikki really deserves that. I'm so happy for her and her mum, and I hope they thoroughly enjoyed it. But 8-0, what a treat that was for the fans that attended. Brilliant.
They must have had a ball, but obviously... Serena's, before she actually came to the England job, she'd done a really good job being the Dutch national coach.
Absolutely. So,
as I say, I'm expecting big things from her. And obviously, she's kicked off her England career as manager. Yeah. We have resounding wins. So,
absolutely.
I hope anybody who was at the game on Friday night, enjoyed themselves. And
Absolutely. Yeah, so moving on to the very last story. Sam Johnson has stalled on West Brom contract talks to focus on top flight promotion. Well done, Sam. I'm not surprised by that. Saints will be bottom of the list of people trying to recruit you, though, unfortunately, despite the fact we know we've been linked. There'll be a lineup of big clubs waiting to get your signature, and I can't help thinking everyone else will be shopping at Harrods and we'll be shopping at Lidl.
I think the problem was last week, and as they used to say that a week was a long time in politics, right? A week's a long time in football, because basically we had the situation where obviously we found out that Saints were interested last week, and now we're hearing that obviously Sam Johnson has rejected the opportunity of any contract talks with West Brom, right? Basically, because he wants to concentrate on getting West Brom back up into the Premier League. I would take that as the green light for any club, given that he runs out of contract next summer. Any club that's interested in Sam Johnson, I would say that's the green light for any club to come in, make an offer, and for him to move from West Brom. I mean, I'm not saying that he wouldn't sign a new contract, but that sounds to me like he's touting to sort of see what clubs are interested in him. And I kind of think, like you do, Mark, that yes, we're in the bus queue, right? But we're at the very end of the bus queue. The thing is I would tell the truth, but now I think that other clubs now will be alerted to his availability. Yeah. And I just think we're some way down the pecking order.
Yeah, all the other clubs will be at the bus stop already, and we'll be the person running to just put their hand up just as the bus is about to pull away. That's where we'll be in the queue.
That's a very good analogy. I like that.
Hold up. So anyway, moving on. Corner chat coming up. Following news this week that those running Saints are eyeing up Steve Cooper of Saints under Ralph all goes south, and the press saying that Eddie Howe is still keen on managing Saints. We will be discussing, is it right for these things to be happening while Ralph is still in the job? So before we start Corner chat, here's the little intro for it. Right, Mark, Corner chat. So, news this week, those running Saints apparently eyeing up Steve Cooper if Saints under Ralph all goes south, and the press is saying Eddie Howe is still keen on managing Saints. Is it right for this to be happening while he's still in the job? I think do you know what? I just think it's a dangerous game to play. Your manager could hear it, see it, and think, do you know what? Sonja, I'm off.
But by the way, before we get into this, because I still feel it's a valid conversation to have, apparently Steve Cooper looks like he's going to Nottingham Forest, who obviously sacked Chris Hughton midweek. So it looks like Steve Cooper's going to be going to Forest. But I still think this is a valid conversation to have, because it's the balance between you having a manager in place, right? And it's kind of like when managers are at press conferences, right? And we have the transfer window going on, either one. And they'll ask a manager about a player, and the manager will turn around and say, I don't want to discuss that player. He's under contract, until there's something for me to tell you. I'm not going to talk about other players. And I kind of think that's the attitude that you have to adapt when you've got a manager already in place. And I can understand why, because obviously Southampton would be sat there and they're thinking to themselves, well, we need a plan if everything sort of goes pear-shaped with Ralph, and I'm sure they do this in-house. I'm sure this is kind of paper talk, because, let's be honest, how often do they get our player recruitment right? How often does the ordinary press get the, the thing is I kind of think when it comes to the press, they might have a handle on what's going on in the bigger clubs, but they don't know what goes on with Southampton. And are they particularly that interested? I don't think they are.
Always seems to me with Southampton, the press almost perceives Southampton as a bit of a threat, and as soon as it looks as though we might be doing something slightly positive, they've got to try and bring us down in some capacity, be that undermining the playing staff or starting rumours about players leaving, unsettling players and whatever. There just seems at times to be this thing about unsettling the club, and this is just another way of doing it. And I get a little bit aggravated by it, to be fair, because it's almost as though it's a case of, why don't you just leave my football club alone?
Yeah, the thing is that, just going back to this, the thing is that I kind of get it if it were true. I do kind of get it if it were true, but I don't think that the club would necessarily give anything away if they were looking to recruit a different manager or anything like that. And it would be them sort of pre-planning just in case.
Well, the thing is, I just saw it as...
It's not like they're looking to make an approach for a manager.
The thing is, I just saw it as the press trying to destabilise the club. They've tried it with the players, with the playing staff over the summer. They kept insisting Ward-Prowse was going. He's obviously now signed a long-term deal. We knew Danny Ings was likely to go anyway, so that wasn't a shock. But for me, this is it just comes across as another attempt by the press to just destabilise the club, which they seem to have been doing for several years now, to be fair. After that first success we had under Koeman, and how successful we were then, it's almost been a sustained attack from the press to destabilise the club every season. It's happened window after window after window, and I just think this is just another attempt from the press to do that. For whatever reason, they just seem to have an issue with our club, to be fair.
I kind of tend to go along with that as well, but then I would also say that someone, if the worst was to happen, because I'm trying to address both sides, right? But if the worst was to happen, I kind of do think that somebody like a Steve Cooper would fit the mold. Plus, you look at the contacts he has. He was responsible for the under-17s, obviously winning the World Cup.
With Eddie Howe,
stuff like that.
With Eddie Howe, I would say, look, Eddie Howe is a good manager. We all know that. He's a decent manager, but I don't think he's one of those managers that's a decent manager with a big budget. I think he's a decent manager with a small budget. He's done well with Bournemouth when he didn't have money. When he had money, he didn't do so well. And that's something you have to think of as a Premier League club,
It may be true that he's waiting for Southampton, but I don't think that Southampton and Eddie Howe...
And not only that, Mark, I look at a similar sized club and a similar sort of budget when he went to Burnley, and for me, he didn't do anything at Burnley as a Premier League manager that would say to me, I want Eddie Howe as a Premier League manager at Southampton. And I don't think he did an awful lot in the Premier League with Bournemouth. So for me, I'm not sold on Eddie Howe. I don't think he's the man for the job.
But this is coming from me, and all I would say is that, Ralph's our manager. Long may he be our manager. I hope he manages Southampton till he reaches retirement age. I say that being a Ralph fan, But like everybody else, there are times when I go into the stadium, I look at the starting lineup and I think, what is going on today? But that's the thing, because the thing is like, and I keep saying it, as long as he gets results, he can feel vindicated.
Well, I will say this, Mark, at the moment. So far this season, 4 games unbeaten.
We're not managers.
Yeah, absolutely. So 4 games unbeaten this season so far. So 4 out of 5 games unbeaten so far in the Premier League. That's a pretty satisfactory start, given how poorly we normally start and given the standard of opposition. Obviously, it won't mean an awful lot if we don't get a result against Wolves, but it does seem as though he's building a half-decent team at the moment. My only concern is if we get hit with a raft of injuries. So we'll see what happens. But at the moment, we're definitely on an upward spiral, which is good. So we'll see where it goes.
For me, we'll have to start seeing the strikers being supplied with the ammo, so that we can start putting the ball in the back of the net.
So anyway, that sums up the corner chat today, I think. So we'll move on now. And coming up next, we've got a very short break, but then we're going to have the Two Saints roundtable preview of Man City versus Saints for you. So we'll be right back with that shortly.
Make the Two Saints Show your permanent fixture with Mark C and Mark H on Fiesta 95 FM.
Leon is with me from the Saints Archive, people, and Tara's with me, frequent traveller to away games, and now part of the SDSA committee. And that, for people that don't know, that's the Saints Disabled Supporters Association. And obviously I have my old lad with me, Mark Carter. Anyway, so we move on to the Man City game. Has anybody any thoughts going into it at all? Any hopes? And I would have thought we're hopeful, but also very, very fearful. Tara, you can kick it off.
Do you know what? I'm going to be really honest here. I am quite hopeful. I think we always go to City and we always play well. Even on the back of that, at home against Leicester, we went up to City a few days later, and in fact, I think we went there twice actually after that, and actually both times we give them a good game. I think on the back of Saturday, the defence should feel quite confident. Our defence should feel quite confident. I just think, we need to get 2 up front, but I'm wondering if Ralph might play it the same as what he did Saturday. I don't know.
I think
he will. Leon, sorry.
I think it's going to be sort of damage limitation, I'm afraid. You obviously won't play 2 up front. Looking, you talk about the right back situation again. I mean, they got Grealish playing down the left-hand side. Livramento's just a young 18-year-old, 19-year-old player. Walker-Peters hasn't really sort of played the season at the moment. So I'm thinking maybe to move Jack Stephens, who's in great form at the moment, to put him at right back and put Bednarek in the middle with Salusi. I'm sure put Stephens up against Grealish. That's my thoughts anyway.
That's quite a good shout, actually.
I have to say, I'm going to the game, a song in my heart, and just hope on the horizon, really. I have no expectation level. I agree with Sarah that the last few games up there have been fairly tight affairs, barring the 6-1 demolition when I think it was Mark Hughes was the manager up there, because it was at that game. That Sunday afternoon wasn't very pleasant. But, in the main, Tara's quite right. We have run them quite close. I kind of remember a game, and it was one of Van Dijk's last ones, I think. It was the one where Guardiola went over and had a quiet word with Nathan Redmond, and the Man City basically, Paul Tierney, who lives in the Greater Manchester area, I'm not saying there's any bias there, but Paul Tierney gave 6 minutes, and 6 minutes were played, and he still didn't blow his whistle. We played a 7th minute. Man City scored, and then as soon as Saints got it to the centre circle to kick off again, he blew his whistle. Now, I'm not saying that money changed hands. I'm not saying that there's a Manchester bias by Paul Tierney, but it is kind of strange that he lives in the greater Manchester area.
I was there for that game.
He does seem to referee Manchester the main Manchester clubs quite a lot in the Premier League, but there you go. Anyway, anybody else want to say anything about the Manchester City preview? Any other worries or anything like that?
I was fairly upbeat after the West Ham result, in the fact that it was a clean sheet. Took the positives from it. A little bit disappointed we weren't quite as buccaneering as I thought we could be. But for me, I hate to say it, I think this is 3-1 Man City. I just think they've got too much for us at the moment. As well as Salisu and Stevens have done. Grealish, we never pick up whenever we play him. Nobody ever marks Jack Grealish whenever we play them. He undoes us every single time he plays against us, always has done. And I think also in Gundogan, he's always a threat. And they've got a certain defender who, at the moment, everything he touches is gold for Man City and Ruben Dias. And I think those three players are a real threat. And I think Dias is one of those players that notoriously Saints will be bad at picking up. Same with Grealish. For some reason, we don't ever pick Jack Grealish up, despite the fact we know what he can do. And we're all sat there most of the time thinking he's got the ball 30 yards out. We know exactly what he's going to do with it. And for some reason, our defenders don't seem to pick up on that. I'm hoping Salisu's put on him because, to be fair...
Well, hopefully Ralph's been showing them the videos.
Well, in all fairness, I'm hoping he puts Salisu on him because I actually think Salisu's pretty much had in his pocket every striker he's played against so far. I know Grealish isn't a striker, but...
Okay, so up front, after the way he played for the last 10, 15 minutes on Saturday, who would start Roger?
No. I think he's not
only if he plays two
for Man City. I think I'll put Shea Adams up front to chase that ball around up front. I think Bojar's probably not quite the game for him.
I was going to say I would play him because it's a vocal point. It's an outlet, and maybe he can bring other runners from the midfield into the game. But I have to say, I'm going for a 2-1 loss.
I'm going to get you to wrap it up quick, Mark, because we haven't got long left.
Right. Leon, can I have a prediction, and Tara as well, just very quickly?
I don't know what to say, but I think 3-0 Man City. Sorry.
1-0.
Tara?
1-0. 1-1.
1-1. Okay, 1-1. You'll do me. I'm travelling up with a friend and his daughter who has Williams syndrome on Saturday. So hopefully you'll see you there. You go?
Yeah, I'm on the coach. So I'm on Saints Way Travel. So I'll be there. So see ya.
Take care, love. And thanks both for agreeing to do this.
Thank you, Leon and Tara, for taking part in doing that with us. The Saints preview, Man City versus Saints. So let's hope the team follow up with a result, definitely. So all that's left for me to say is thank you for joining us on the Two Saints podcast show today. Over to Mark H to say his goodbyes.
Yep. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks still for listening to our ramblings for the last hour and a half. And, be kind and take care of each other until next week. Bye for now.
Absolutely right. So coming up, very short announcement for you, which is coming up right now.
Just to remind you all, you can contact us via our email address, the Two Saints Podcast Show at outlook.com, for questions or items you'd like to hear in future shows. You can listen to the radio show on Fiesta 95 FM in Southampton and via onlineradiobox.com. Also, the Two Saints Podcast Show is now available via Spotify, SoundCloud, Overcast, Acast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Deezer, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music and Podbean, or via our Facebook page, The Two Saints Show, and our YouTube channel, The Two Saints Podcast Show.
There we go. That's the ways of accessing the podcast version of the show. Obviously, the Two Saints Podcast Show. So all that's left for me to say is join us again next week when the Two Saints go marching in again. Thanks very much. Bye for now.